Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lincoln Journal Star's Life in the Red podcast. Your usual hosts, Luke Mullin and Amie Just. Welcomed today by Wilson Moore, the newest member of our Journal Star Husker Extra team. Wilson, you've been helping us out with a lot of football, following along to Nebraska softball as well. You'll have other stuff down the line, but been a busy spring for you so far. How you finding Lincoln?
Absolutely. Yeah. Link's been great. Staying busy. Honored to make my debut on the pod here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So today, of course, we want to preview the spring game. That'll be the main focus. We have some basketball updates, of course, to get to softball and baseball as well, and some important parts of their season. But as we move into this spring game, we had some big news come through. New and old Herbie Husker design back. Blonde Herbie, aka a lot of people have been calling for his return during the reign of brunette Herbie in the last 20 or so years. But really, I think, neat. Basically, the same kind of old slash throwback retro logo coming back new again.
I mean, sure. I do like the sport specific ones. It would be cool if, Herbie could like change his outfit for like every sport.
That'd be good.
Like
Yeah.
Mike the Tiger does at LSU. Be pretty cool. But I think my favorite of the alternate logos is Singlet Herbie for wrestling. I think it's pretty cool. Anyway.
I like the basketball Herbie too. That'll have some good applications maybe on the court. We'll see what what they can cook up with those designs. But we expect to see the new Herbie Husker there live in the action at the spring game. And before we get into some of our different previews, players to watch, have a few other updates to share from the last week or so of spring ball. Wilson, we got the chance to talk to AJ Rollins, a guy who, of course, got a little bit of playing time at tight end last year. Staff moved him to defensive end, and he's really been enjoying that transition.
Yeah, no, definitely interesting case. He's not the only guy who's moved, who's changed sides of the ball this spring, but it's always interesting when a lot of people say something similar, say the same things about a guy. And what he said and what Matt Rule said was just he can play a lot more instinctively. He can be more loose and natural. He's not on offense. He doesn't think, okay, where am I going? What do I do? It's defense. It's simpler. And it sounds like that suits his personality a lot well. And by all indications, it's going well and he's doing well. Tony White gave a very big endorsement of the way he's been playing the other day. So yeah, interested to see him in the spring game, see him at defensive end.
Yeah, his athletic build, I think, puts him as a good contender for that spot. And there's so many moving pieces right there at defensive end. I think we can expect him to get a pretty good amount of playing time there, spring game.
Yeah, and obviously, we don't know how that's going to break down yet. Just how many snaps the coaches want to see from each individual guy. But yeah, he's definitely somebody high on the list to watch for sure.
Yep. And one of those players, there are quite a few that have been wearing, yellow, no contact, no drills jerseys there in practice. Casey Thompson, the most notable among them. But we got a brief update throwing in a limited capacity at practice the last couple of days. A little bit more of the details from offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield. Been wearing a headset during scrimmages, really active in the football facility. Kind of the stuff that you'd expect from a veteran quarterback, but really good to hear, I think, just how committed he's been this entire spring as he works his way towards finally getting back there on the field.
None of that is surprising. Some of the tutelage, so to speak, of the younger guys, kind of teaching them how to watch film and, conduct themselves in meetings and just being that veteran leader, even though he can't go out there and perform as much as he probably wants to, right? He's doing everything else that he possibly can. And yeah, we'll see when he can be full go again, but I don't expect it to be anytime soon.
Yep, certainly. And final one of those injury updates or personnel updates to share. Teddy Prohaska recovering from a season-ending shoulder injury. He had surgery a few months ago. He said he expects to sit out the spring game, said he'll be full go there for the fall. Another guy on that offensive line, Ben Scott, heard he got rolled up on in practice a week or two ago, but he soon returned. He had a green no contact jersey on for a little while. Soon shed that. He will be full go, ready to play as expected in that one. He's got a lot of family coming too, so he'll be excited to finally get the chance to play in front of them. But We don't know, as we record this on Wednesday, by the way, we don't know exactly the format yet. We think, it might be a classic scrimmage. Hard to say at this point, but as we kind of sit here a few days out, let's just start with kind of what do we expect? Offense or defense? Who do you think kind of gets the upper hand early in this one?
Offense.
Really?
Yep. I think they will bounce back from things. But we don't know just yet if it's going to be, as we've said, right? If it's going to be a true scrimmage, if the offensive linemen are going to have to wear like a different colored jersey to kind of play on both teams, just so the numbers are there. But yeah, I anticipate lots of running the ball, and we will see if the defense can catch that.
Definitely a lot of running. Wilson, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree. It seems that the offense is a little ahead, although Matt Rule did say the defense won the day on Saturday. Like you said, hard to really make a call like this when we don't know what the format will be, if they're going to be scrimmaging, what they're going to be doing. Just a lot we don't know at this point going in, and that's what it's for. I think we'll learn a lot. Like I said that.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised at both of you. Honestly, I'm saying the defense, and that's not necessarily like an indication of the specific like players or format. I just think you see this early in the season a lot. Sometimes it's a little bit easier for the defense to acclimate. Offenses, sometimes it takes time to get all those plays down. Get into a rhythm of drives. You can have just a negative play gets you set back, easy to end up in a punt or whatever. But I will say, the install, we've heard kind of about the moving pieces of this Tony White defense. They get the chance to go up against them in the scrimmages, in practice, but you might still be able to work some things in there that give the offense a little bit of trouble. So that's kind of what I was thinking in that.
Fair enough.
So
I disagree.
Yeah. We got team offense over here, which I'm sure the fans at home will be eager to see some of these different players, show up and perform well. So let's start with there. We're going to get into some different players or areas that we want to watch, keep an eye on, players who we think might impress, might have a big day, chance to show a lot. So starting there on the offensive side of the ball, Amie, who will you have your eye on?
Ben Scott. If you've read me at all lately during spring or listened to the other podcast that I do with Sam McEwen at the Omaha World Herald, I've been really high on Ben Scott since he transferred here. I think that he can be a really big piece for this offensive line. So we got an opportunity to talk to him on Tuesday. He said that he's good to go after having a scare, getting rolled up on, as we mentioned earlier. But he has been solely working at center, he said, which is what I said would probably happen. Just knowing his talents there, right? So for those who haven't been keeping up, got other things going on this spring, other things to pay attention to. Scott went to Arizona State first. He started in like almost 30 games over the past 3 seasons for Arizona State, all over the place, but mostly right tackle and center. All of his starts last season came at center. And that's just a spot of need for this offensive line, considering their starting center from last year has no more eligibility after he played for like 3 different head coaches. So best of luck to him moving forward in life. But they need a center, and I think he will slot in well there. How many reps he will have, no idea. But he is definitely who I'm going to be watching. My number 1 player to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, center is one of those positions where if a guy's doing his job right, you might hardly notice him, but if things are going wrong, it's very, very obvious. Some of those different protections that they have to set up for the quarterback, of course, the snap, getting that shotgun set, or maybe we might have a lot more under center this year with the pro style offense that Marcus Satterfield is bringing. Like you said, maybe expect a lot of running. Wilson, you're going to have your eye on that.
Yes, I am. And this obviously comes with the asterisk of we don't know how much or if he's going to play, but A.J. Allen is a guy who, if he's on the field, I'll have my eye on. Interesting running back room, and he's a big reason for that. I think he showed last year that he is a Big Ten caliber running back. His year was cut short, 4 games, but he averaged close to 6 yards per carry. So I'm interested in seeing how he comes back, what he's able to do, and just how they split those snaps between running backs. They have probably probably 3 guys with solid college football experience to divvy the snaps among.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, considering the potential that Allen showed last year versus, Anthony Grant, the guy who produced, Gabe Ervin, the guy who's evidently been, winning the spring, impressing the coaches, Ramir Johnson, super versatile. I mean, those are the 4 guys you've got at the top, and it'll be interesting to see how they get used, maybe in different packages or evidentially, who's out there the most. Well, I think, it maybe an obvious one, but I think it's got to be the quarterbacks. Jeff Sims, up there, of course, at the top. We heard from Matt Rule a few days ago that he hopes these quarterbacks are going to be live. Again, we'll wait on the official word on that one. But if they are, Sims' ability to run some of these different, read option looks, maybe take off there in the pocket. I'll just be very interested to see his command of the offense, connection with some of these wide receivers, how quickly they're able to get these calls and get that offense moving. And of course, there's a lot of scholarship quarterbacks on this roster. Guy we've heard a lot about this spring, Heinrich Harburg, had a very big spring game a couple of years ago, showed off really great arm talent. He's another guy that can run a little bit. So both those quarterbacks, I'm just interested to see how they command the offense, operate in the pocket and how the offense kind of flows when they're out there.
A no-brainer for sure.
Yeah, quarterback. Yeah, people will be looking at the quarterback. I don't think I don't think that's a controversial statement out there. But when we move to the defensive side of the ball, I think we're all kind of in the same area because this edge rusher linebacker type is kind of the wild card, you could say, of this Tony White defense. You're going to have a couple down linemen there up front, but potential to have some more edge rusher type there as that front 3, and then also, of course, in that linebacker group. So, Amie, we'll start with you. Who in that group are you looking at?
MJ Sherman, the Georgia transfer, well, one of the Georgia transfers,
Yeah.
right? I love his energy. We've seen it a little bit at practice in the limited amount of practice we've been able to see. His energy in the press conferences, or the press conference, excuse me, that he had. I really think he can latch on here. He, like he said, he has $1 million friends, right? And that means that he has tons of friends and tons of teammates who now make millions of dollars in the NFL. So he's learned alongside the best. Georgia, that program is no joke, right? So, he has a foundation from there that I think he can build on here and latch onto and do something special. Now, is he going to do a ton of special things this Saturday? It's the spring game, so let's be reasoned here. But I'm really interested in watching the snaps that he has and how he uses that energy to make plays.
Yeah, a guy with all the talent in the world, and like you said too, his attitude. A guy that's committed to being great, improving, doing what his coaches kind of set out for him to do. Identify that role too. We kind of heard he's working in that jack linebacker spot. A little bit of a mix of pass rush, can drop into coverage too. And I've got my eye on a guy who might also be filling that role, Jamari Butler, because more of an edge rusher last year. Got the chance to be on the field production in a limited capacity, and he's taking on a little bit of transition there, to add some of those coverage skills. And I'm glad you kind of brought up, like, it's the spring game. Defense is such an interesting one, too, because a guy might have 0 tackles, 0 plays, and he might have played a great game, making sure he had his assignments down, setting the edge, dealing with all these kind of, minor things that might not necessarily show up. So, yeah, when we're discussing these defensive players, like you said, important to keep in mind it's just the spring, the production is not necessarily exactly what they're looking for. And Wilson, rounding us out, what do you got?
Looking at Prince Will Umanmielen, the freshman defensive lineman from Texas. Those early enrollees, it's always kind of a toss-up. You never know what the learning curve is going to be like. You never know how long they're going to take to adjust just what is demanded of them in college football. And it sounds like he's a guy who has adjusted quickly. Tony White has been really happy with him, his ability to rush the passer, and we're going to be able to see him in a bit more of an extended capacity, at least a little bit, on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely the highest ranked recruit who will participate in this spring game from the most recent 2023 recruiting class, Malachi Coleman, higher rated, but he'll be on campus in the fall. And like you said, yeah, Cameron Lenhart, another guy in that group, freshman, early enrollee, has been working. We heard, they're both working with the ones, means rotating in, getting their chance with some different groupings. But yeah, they'll definitely both have their chance to show up and see what they can do. Like you said, always good to get a look at those young players. But our third category we want to talk about, a wild card, any spot, offense, defense, any aspect of the game that we're looking at. Amie, you got an interesting one for us.
Yeah, so it comes with a big caveat, right? So spring games, sometimes they don't do a whole lot of special teams work. So if there's no special teams work, well, then this just goes out the window. But I want to see progress on punt and kick return. Nebraska was abysmal in both of these areas last year. Nebraska was 116th in kick return yards, averaging 17 yards per return. And then they only had 4 punt returns last year, which is the lowest out of any FBS team. So it's hard to get worse than that. So the bar to clear is on the floor. But if they do work on punt and kick returns in the spring game, that is what I will be paying attention to.
Yeah. So last year was the fair catch simulator. So if they even attempt a return, you'll be pleased.
Yes. I mean, ball security is super important. And yes, you want to be safe, right? But games are changed on special teams. And with the emphasis that we've seen in practice on special teams, you would hope that this is not a fair catch-a-palooza.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because we saw Ed Foley. You can hear him from a long way away to orchestrating these drills. And when he first arrived at Nebraska a couple months ago, he talked about his time with Matt Rule, his time in the NFL, and talking about how if they just block one punt, that changes a game. That can be an extra win. So obviously it's a season long thing that they're looking at, but establishing those foundations in the spring game, really important there on special teams. For me, what I'm looking at, and you kind of touched on it briefly with Ben Scott, talking about these offensive line numbers, that was kind of one of the things that was maybe a holdup for the scrimmage. So I'll be looking at these depth offensive linemen, interested to see how they do, because a lot of these guys, they might be getting a lot of reps out there. Looking at Gunnar Gatula, early enrollee freshman here from Lincoln Southeast. He's been really impressive. Justin Evans Jenkins, more of an interior guy, can play guard there. We've seen Dylan Menning, Ezra Miller, a lot of these different guys that are getting reps against their fellow linemen in practice, but getting the chance to go out there in the spring game, face a real defensive front, get a lot of reps in. I'll be very interested to see how they perform, and maybe if these guys, they could get gassed, by the third or the fourth quarter if they're out there a lot. So again, we will see for those official numbers, see what happens there, but I'll keep an eye on the linemen, and you've got another spot where the rotation is something you're looking at.
I do, yeah. The wide receivers, which has an interesting mix of newcomers, returners, I think, too. Especially I'm going to have my eye on Billy Kemp and Josh Fleeks, 2 recent transfers. We'll see how they fit in. But just I think there are a lot of question marks in that wide receiver room. I don't think we know, 4 months out from the first game, what it's going to look like, what those rotations are going to look like, who's going to get the bulk of the snaps. So Saturday will be our first look at that and kind of get something of a sense of who's where, who's lining up on the slot, who's on the outside, who they're going to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marcus Washington, one of those veterans from last year's team, he's had a pretty good spring as well. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. We could list 10 or 12 of these scholarship wide receivers, guys that can hopefully make an impact. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that wide receiver spot as well. And one other quick update there from the spring game, always a major recruiting weekend. And so far, we know of at least about 10 to 15 players that they expect to have on campus. Quite a few from 2024, some future players, 2025 and 2026. But in regards to this 2024 class, 2 of the highlights include Mater Dei offensive lineman Brandon Baker, one of the top offensive tackles in the entire country. He was just here in Nebraska a few weeks ago on an unofficial visit, so he will be back, as will Ainsworth tight end Carter Nelson, major recruiting target, top in-state player for this 2024 class that they are going after. So those guys will be there. We'll have more updates on that, so stay tuned to journalstar.com. But want to get into basketball because there's been a lot of action. Last week, we had some different, transfer portal updates. There's more of that to talk about, but starting with the women's basketball team, signed Jessica Petrie, the Australian, last week, and adding a big impact transfer in this one, Montana State guard Darian White, headed to Nebraska, averaged 14.3 points, 5.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists per game last year. Great all-around guard. They're an all-conference pick out there in the Big Sky for a couple of years now, and fills a really big need there at guard.
Yeah, especially after, you lose Sam Hybe, you need a guard who isn't afraid to be your floor general, and she has shown that for the Bobcats in the last several years. Yeah, I am really intrigued to see how she meshes with Jazz Shelley there. But yeah, I like the pickup, even though she's a Bobcat. Go Grizz.
I knew we were going to get a little a little jab in there, of course, when there's a Montana State reference coming up on the pod. But yeah, definitely. I mean, when you think about her with Jazz Shelley and then Allison Widener too, I mean,
hmm
that's a really good crop of guards that all kind of do something different for the offense. Can all contribute in a lot of different ways. So big transfer, their pickup, and a little bit of a interesting connection that helped bring her to Nebraska. And it's an update here too. The new women's basketball assistant coach, Julian Asselby, he helped recruit her to Montana State in the first place. And by the way, filling that role, as we mentioned last week, Tom Gailey, pursuing mission work instead, longtime assistant coach. So, by the way, Asselby came to Nebraska, of course, Montana State a few years ago, but spent the last 3 seasons as Florida. A really good program as an assistant coach down there. So, really experienced coach coming on to Amie Williams' staff.
Yeah, I am.
Certainly. And the other updates for the men's basketball team, 2 transfer portal additions last week kept the momentum going with a high school commit. This time around, 2024 recruit Nick Janowski. He's a guard from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, committed to Nebraska on Friday. 6'3" shooting guard, ranked as a 4-star prospect, number 79 nationally by 24/7 Sports. So one of the highest ranked recruits from the Fred Hoiberg recruiting era. Excellent scoring guard again. 2024 class, so it's going to be 2 years before he joins the program. But really big pickup. I think a guy who you're expecting to come in, maybe not need a redshirt year to come and be part of that rotation right away.
Yeah, you need that, and you look at where Nebraska has significant needs, and guard is one of them.
Yep.
Because you saw it last year, right, with Ramel Lloyd taking a red shirt, Karan McPherson, him sustaining a season-ending knee injury before the season even started, and Emmanuel Bandamel getting hurt midway through the season. They need guards so bad, and it doesn't help that Karan McPherson entered the transfer portal the other day. So they need guards like desperately.
Absolutely. And I mean, that kind of cascading, process of, cause and effect with guards, that's what eventually led, Sam Hoiberg to have such a prominent role, which, he took and ran with. He played some very big minutes for them down the stretch, but you want to have better numbers so that, you do have that depth, guys that you can have step in. And as you mentioned, McPherson entering the portal is kind of a really rough, Nebraska career that you have to say, because comes in, takes a redshirt year, wants to learn the offense, by all accounts, really good team player there in practice and expected to be a big part of that rotation the next year. Season-ending knee injury, in the summer before he even hits the court. And it's kind of easy to understand, if his career never quite caught off the ground, looking for somewhere new, but really tough because a guy with a lot of potential that never even got to play a single game there for Nebraska.
Yeah, you feel bad for him. There's just no
Yeah.
way around it. There's nothing you could have done. It's just a freak thing. But wherever he lands, I wish him the best. Because sometimes a fresh start can do a lot of good.
Absolutely. And a few other quick updates. As we said, Janowski coming there, 2024 class. As a quick reminder, IMG Academy guard Eli Rice, he's the sole high school addition for Nebraska's 2023 class, will be able to play next season. And another transfer portal update, a guy that Nebraska was looking at, Siena transfer guard Javian McCollum, just announced today to commit to Oklahoma over Nebraska. And, some of the other transfer portal additions maybe played in a little bit. Nebraska has some other targets there as well. So that's the quick men's basketball and women's basketball update for that one. Moving on, we've got some updates for softball and baseball. This is why we were really excited to bring Wilson in because, me and Amie, we've been, we've been following along, we've been surmising a little bit, but you've been there, you've been talking to these players, these coaches, and this was a really big weekend for the softball team as well. I'd been mentioning this Indiana series for quite a while. They're having such a great year, and man, Nebraska goes in 3-game sweep. That's an Indiana team that was receiving votes in the national polls. Brooke Andrews was named the Big Ten Softball Player of the Week, by the way. Hit 600 in the series, 2 doubles, home run, 6 RBIs, and really good pitching performances too. Just solid all-around effort for that 3-game series.
Yeah, it was. I think Indiana is a team that has already peaked this year. They had that 18-game winning streak early on, lost to Northwestern a couple weeks ago. So part of it, I think, was Nebraska got them at a good time. They wouldn't have wanted them 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yeah, just a good all-around series for Nebraska. That is a really good, really deep lineup that Indiana has. And Courtney Wallace and Sarah Harness were both fantastic in the circle. They did enough. The offense that had really struggled over the past two Big Ten series came to life. And like you said, Brooke Andrews was great. I think she's really having a breakout season this year. She spent the past couple of years, I think, kind of overshadowed by her younger sister, Billy, but she's been great this year. Her average is up in the 360s, I think, tied for the team lead in homers, and has had some big moments this year, some big late inning homers against Iowa State and Purdue. She's been fantastic. And this Husker team is in a really good spot going into the last 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, both of those Andrews sisters doing a great job for the team. As you mentioned, Courtney Wallace in that series earned 2 wins, allowed just 5 runs in 15 innings there in the circle. And as you mentioned, in a good spot right now in the standings, 10-4 in the conference, 30-13 overall. Actually, second in the conference in those standings, only trailing Northwestern, 13-1 in Big Ten play. Nebraska will face them the last week of April. But this weekend, hosting Wisconsin for a 3-game series, seeing those bats can stay hot, I think is the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we know the pitching is going to be solid for as much as they rely on Courtney Wallace, and she has thrown a lot of innings this year. You know what you're going to get from Courtney Wallace. She's going to be competitive. She's going to at least give the Huskers a chance, and Sarah Harness can do the same thing. But yeah, the bats have been hot and cold all year. They'll be the key for that series and really for the rest of the season.
Certainly, and with spring game, can maybe expect a lot of attention, big crowds there at Mullin for that one. Moving on to the baseball team, quick update for this one. Nebraska took care of business there against Northwestern, sweeping the worst team in the Big Ten, exactly what they needed to do. If they lost any of those, their RPI would have suffered significantly. I think it already dropped a couple spots just on account of a 3-game series against a team with a low RBI. Couple interesting games there too. The Saturday game, all 9 of Nebraska's runs coming in 1 inning. Kind of strange, Will Bolt, but he said it's just baseball, which that's a common answer there from the skipper. But it is, if the bats are all just hot all at once, even if it's just in 1 inning, it can all just come together. And that game showed that they've got the pop. And then Sunday, as if you needed any confirmation, wind was gusting like crazy, blowing there from left field to right field. They hit 7 home runs, but I don't know. I might have to put an asterisk on a couple of these being there. I'd say maybe 4 of them, 3 or 4 on a normal day, get out of the ballpark. Quite a few of those really wind aided if they went to right field. I really felt bad for the outfielders watching that one. I mean, it was a horrible day to be an outfielder, just looking up and the ball lands 10 feet beyond where you thought it was going to be. It was a tough day for the fielders in that one, but what they needed to do, and it set up another midweek game there against Creighton, which has been a struggle for this Nebraska team, but tied 4-4 with bases loaded in the bottom of the 7th. Weather, lightning coming in, forcing the suspension of the game, and most likely scenario is that this will be made up May 9th in Omaha before Nebraska and Creighton play for the 3rd and final time this year. So quite an interesting week for baseball, wouldn't you say? It always is.
Midwest weather is not kind to baseball. As I texted our dear friend Evan Bland, covered a lot of things in my short career, but I have never covered a lightning delay.
That's a good one. We'll have to add that to the list sometime.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay going my entire career without ever covering one of those.
Well, certainly, Wilson. I heard you caught a little bit of that baseball game too. Your first game there at Haymarket Park, which I know is just just seeing a few innings. But what'd you kind of make of the team in that one?
Oh, it was a beautiful night for some baseball. Glad to, yeah, it was everything, I think that has been as advertised as what I heard. A lineup that can score runs, some shaky midweek pitching. It was, Bryce Matthews can hit. He hit a laser in the left field. Yeah, it reaffirmed a lot of just what I had heard and read about this Nebraska baseball team.
Yeah, Bryce Matthews confirmed good at baseball. And by the way, him and Max Anderson both kind of hovering around that 400 batting average, which if you're a guy hitting 400 at a pretty good college baseball conference, it's fair to say those guys are going to have some professional opportunities coming up this summer. And just looking at the bigger picture there for the Nebraska baseball team, technically in first place in the Big Ten right now, 7-2 in conference, 21-11-1 overall. I'm going to say technically because Indiana 9-3 there in conference, probably a little bit stronger there. Again, the standings determined by your winning percentage there, but I think having played an extra series there, having won that one, Indiana probably gets the leg up in that one. But really big series coming up for Nebraska this weekend. Big road series at an Iowa team that at the top of non-conference schedule, they were really picking up some big wins there, kind of surging into the top 25, but they've kind of leveled out a little bit the last couple of weeks. Slow start in conference. So Nebraska may be hitting them at the right time, as you mentioned, for Indiana and softball. Well, this could be a big opportunity. Again, Iowa down a little bit, but chance for a big win in that one. So that is the baseball update. Again, midweek game suspended, so no result in that. But I think that's all we got for our updates today. As I said, we're looking forward to the spring game. We will have all the coverage there. Journalstar.com. Make sure to stay tuned. We'll have Amie's column as usual, some game story breakdown. We'll be watching the fans, all sorts of stuff, action there at Memorial Stadium, stuff to look forward to. And we'll all be back again for the podcast next week, bringing you the spring game recap. So appreciate all of you tuning in as usual. I've been Luke Mullin alongside Amie Just and Wilson Moore. Thanks for listening to the Life in the Red podcast.